Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake lie or imagination. Sattology builds your identity and mythology destroys it. So don't use the word mythology for ancient verifiable history of Ramayana and Mahabharata because it has been verified in two of my books and numerous other publications also, including a film which is typically based on Mahabharata, recently came out in India. So I have a very special guest, and we're going to talk about India and USA in a different perspective. So let us welcome Dr. Ratan Sharda.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. Yes.
So, sitting from India, and you are on TV stations all over India on every important issue. Now, when you see the current politics in the USA, and it actually brings down the focus from many other issues which are facing the world today. The biggest issue is the price rise, inflation, and other things which are going on. How do you see United States today from your perspective?
Well, honestly, I see a great civilization on the decline. I see that the wonderful, innovative spirit, the spirit of adventure, the spirit of doing something new and rewarding it, is slowly and also not being politically correct, is slowly giving way to being politically correct to a fault, and the society going down, the way economy is tanking, and the way its image in the world is also suffering because of the way it handled Middle East, the way it handled Afghanistan, and now Ukraine. Uh, Even I would say even the Taiwan episode. So it shows that the USA is no more leading the world the way it was. Whether negative positive, that's a different way. And also I see total disregard for the environment, for the kind of consumption that USA citizens indulge in, which results in the climate problem. So, and also I see a strong swerve towards a radical left, beginning from Democrat. I hope it doesn't hit Republicans also. And the wokeism that is affecting the very dialogues in politics that we used to see earlier on. The conservatism is being sidelined, and the radical left, Islamism, and this fake liberalism in the name of woke is what is going to hurt American society in the long run. That, in short, I can say. And since I talked about the disregard for the ecology, I was reading from 1900 to 1989, U.S. population grew 3 times, but its consumption grew 17 times. 5% of the world population, that USA, creates 50% of the global waste. This is an article from USA. To just give an idea, an average American would spend 35 times more resources than an Indian, and 53 times more consumption of goods and services as compared to China. A child born in USA will be having 13 times more damage on the ecology as compared to Brazilian child. There are some of bare facts, and these come from US resources. So this disregard for the global ecology at their own comfort, which led to the thirst for energy all over the world and damaging other countries, is what I see from an outside. And it's a sad decline because the way the leadership quality also is going down, the kind of debates that happen are not very different from the kind of debate we see on Indian TV in Indian politics. And I always thought that American politics was much more well defined and much more thought and much more discriminating in a positive way.
There is a lot of talk in both sides of the aisle. We don't talk much political sides. We don't take anyone's, but usually the debates on both the sides are naming other countries for climate change by the Democrats. Like the many reports have come for India and China buying petroleum or consuming more, and that is on the left. But on the right, if you look at the Republican side, they have no counter to any of those things. They have literally and I think for getting the votes and getting elected, they might even go to those points for the Democrats also. Like in the case of Russia Ukraine war, They all wholeheartedly supported the arming the Ukraine. And and today, I mean, I don't see any viable opposition in the US right now to any. So the whole paradigms of left and right has completely become permanent, which was not designed to be permanent, which was designed to be changing with the election. So how do you see from India when Modi ji says, Prime Minister Modi says that India is the mother of all democracies? So how do you see from India the left-right divide in the US and also important issues of naming India where it cannot be named actually?
As I said, putting the blame on the others has been going on since the colonial times. The way US took over the entire American continent, the way it persecuted the natives, but it was always done for the good of the natives. That is how it was looked upon. And since you talked about its behavior with the world, we know that in Latin America, US interfered 41 times in 100 years to change the governments there because of the race issues or natural resource issues or any other reason. Ukraine, it changed the government. We remember they created a coup. So this, and when they blame people, I have read CIA archives where they gloat over in a very racist manner of elimination of at least 12 scientists, nuclear scientists, rocket scientists, etc. And this left and right divide in USA doesn't matter really, because ultimately the so-called deep state, the powerful arms military lobby, the powerful pharma lobby, powerful big tech, I think they now decide what is going to be the narrative of US, how it is going to control the world thought, world environment, also the world battlefields. If that is so, then I think the left and right debate can go on, but it doesn't affect the deep state, which has entrenched interest in conflicts. I, another information that I can share from analysis of various issues. USA has been in war 93% of its time since it was born in 1776. So out of 246 years, 227 have been some conflict or other. So can they blame others? Can they really blame other democracies and other countries when they have supported dictators to have their say? So this blame game will not work because people are slowly realizing. So when they blame others, actually the globe is looking at US in a negative manner, which was not so earlier on, because people believed there was a strong ethical streak in US, which is missing. Recently, I read JP Morgan's trader, saying that their bosses forced him taught them how to spoof lies, and how slice of profits of North Carolina casino went to politicians. So how different is politics in USA as compared to India now if you look at on a political level? And as I said, having consumed more than anybody else, wasted more than anyone else, trying to blame poor countries who are on the development path yet would be very strange. And I think people don't buy it anymore. American citizens even now worry more about their consumption. As the article I quoted, they also say that American citizens will be feeling least guilty about wasting the resources. So US needs to go back to the drawing board, relook at the way it is conducting its own affairs in the world. And that is how we look this left-right divide. Of course, Democrat is being slowly usurped by the wokes and the left people. And to sound better, even conservatives may lose some of its stripes. So it's a worrisome situation for US itself because it is in a deep recession already. Predictions of recession in coming 2 3 years, and the way it is handling that is being questioned, and way it is being fudged that is being questioned. And when America suffers, world suffers. When America sneezes, world still gets the cold because it is the biggest consumer. Having admitted that, I think USA politics right now in a downward slide. Just as I said, the civilization itself, they need to buck up and need to actually start again gaining their own strength before they start dictating terms to other countries.
You know, for on this Independence Day, I had a good fortune of being at the INS Satpura was here in San Diego Naval Port, and they did a 75 laps in the within the naval compound, and it was a, I mean, the ship was very impressive. So I asked one of my friends in the Navy, I said, what is your view of the Indian Navy ship? He said it was something which we don't have. And it's not a destroyer, it's a frigate. It's a smaller ship actually, as compared to American destroyers. So they were literally shocked that it was a made in India ship. They initially thought it was a Russian ship. And I say it's not really Russian. You have to check it out. It's a made in India ship. So the ignorance is very high, that somehow that there is a general impression in the American society that India buys 100% of their goods from foreign countries. Like, so it's a typical third world view, where the idea is third world always buys from the first world. Now, when
They
it,
are
when
right.
it,
They are right in a way because they live in past. Till 2014, more than 98% of the armament requirements were being imported for political reasons, for corruption reasons. Since the advent of Mr. Modi, now 44% of the Indian defense equipment is manufactured indigenously. And of course, in case of rockets, in case of satellites, we are self-dependent. Not only that, we are now major launchers of satellites for the world. You remember the cartoon when there was a racist cartoon of Indian barely clothed Indian with a cow trying to get inside a exclusive club of satellite manufacturing countries. India has responded to that. So as I said, Americans, if they start really looking at the world beyond Pacific and beyond their own huge country, they will realize world has moved on. This third world view of the entire world, and as some people jokingly say that US citizens don't know what is beyond the USA, that needs to change because world is changing. The power shift is towards Asia now. China unfortunately is trying to create a chaos and trying to monopolize the world economy, but if it were not to, then the entire balance of world economy and development and also wealth is moving towards Asia. It is historical cycle. You can't really put a blame on somebody or try to claim credit. It is historical cycle. Those who were exploited are slowly coming out of it. I hope Africa also comes out of it. Unfortunately, the colonial powers, by creating artificially created nations with dividing tribes, is still in chaos, whether it's dictatorship, whether it's corruption, whether it's tribal warfare or Islam Christian warfare. And Africa has huge potential. So if America wants to play a positive guardian role because it has seen the world, it has wonderful technology and it has wonderful reach and power, then the world would prosper. But if it wants to live in isolation, the way it was earlier living in World War One and World War Two, unfortunately, and even today, pushing the war in Ukraine, Russia, and sitting back. So if that is the attitude, then they will suffer. World will move on. But if they understand the power of the world, the way now economies are moving, the way if they were to support Africa in a genuine sense, Africa could come out. If they could leave even Middle East alone, probably it would be better off. So these are the issues which America has to ponder, whether it really still wants to dictate terms or seeing the changing circumstances, want to cooperate with the world and find the entire world a much more happier place.
no, you took a great point on Africa actually, because many African Union leaders are openly now coming out and being proclaiming that the Europeans actually looted their land. So the
Yeah.
sentiments which is in India is also in Africa in a very strong way.
Oh,
And
yes.
and the American policy, which is very Eurocentric, like if you ask an American politician, the world is just Europe, USA, and Canada. And very funny thing is, one of the Fox contributor was asked the capital of Canada by Tucker Carlson, and she said she did not know the capital of Canada. So this is the awareness of a person, of a journalist. I'm not even
And
talking a normal
Canada
man.
is their second brother to USA. Canada and US are like a conjoined twins in terms of their relations for so many years,
And they
right?
both had the same colonial master, British.
Yeah.
Canada
Yes.
is still a British suzerainty because the monarch is still the British. Uh, and so the one of the next questions on the climate side we already
Or
spoke.
you just use the word Eurocentrism. Now, unfortunately, every media, including Indian media, is so Eurocentric. Anything happens is Europe becomes a headline. You change DPs and you create all kind of debates. If some Islamist hits somebody in Europe, but they keep quiet when it happens in Africa. News coverage is poor from the other continents, from other nations. It is true even of India so far. And because they are copying the West on that, West is copying the news from leftists from India. So you have strange bedfellows where India is seen through the leftist glasses, sitting in US or in India, and India is looking at US through US made media glasses. So it's not a good situation. It's high time that the media starts looking at the entire world in the new way it has evolved now. So that is where the issue lies. So this Eurocentrism was great earlier on. And I think in terms, as far as US is concerned, Eurocentrism also because there is a keen sense of competition between the two. And this is, if I were to go by many debates, it is basically a division between Catholic and the Protestant world, and that is what has hurt US, Europe, which US is trying to control, and slowly Europe realizes it sends no more lie with the its good doesn't lie with US anymore. Just as UK would also is slowly realizing. So this urge to dominate by USA, if once it goes out, I think there is a huge scope and there is a wonderful world that is waiting for us.
I mean, that mindset is not going to go very soon because it's going to continue, because it's just ingrained in the textbooks that America needs to lecture and America needs to be the global policeman and Americans need to lead the world. So, it's like a leading is always an act of,
How many Americans know that Hawaii, the 50th state of Hawaii, was actually colonized in a very brutal manner? The local Hawaiians who welcomed the missionaries, who became big sugar daddies or sugar farmers and businessmen, and slowly captured the local they fought with the local natives, native Hawaiians, deposed of the queen, got America to USA to help them and colonize it. And they were recognized as late as 1993 when Clinton actually apologized for what they did to Hawaii. So if we don't know what is, if US citizens don't know what is happening next door, I am not even talking of 17th, 18th century colonization. I am talking of 20th century. So if US citizens refuse to see what was happening next to them, how even expansionism was happening so close, I think then they need to really relook at the history itself.
see, unfortunately, even my book is there, Gold, Glory, and God. I have captured the incident of Hawaii. In the one of the problems with the policymakers is that they're so struck in the Washingtonism. I'll say Washingtonism, that they cannot get out of the DC circles. And DC circles, one of the very famous analysts said to me, and is an American analyst, he said, the America will die 1,000 deaths in the DC itself, but the rest of the America is going to be free from DC culture. So that is what is going on. The narratives are built there, narratives are sent out, and also a culture of international assassinations, which was very common. They're part of the CIA, very normal. And there's a recently book came out where some Indian politicians and officials were also assassinated by CIA. And like that, there are reports of every single other country. Don't you think this kind of narrative of bossing it over, imposing your leadership for your own control, and ignoring the human rights violations at home, which are becoming increasingly against the Hindu community also, which is increasing, people are not realizing it, but it's going in a big way. And no Republican, no Democrat is going to support, because both sides are playing the same politics from our perspective. So what is your view on this nature of the American policymakers who are constantly lecturing all other countries and trying to boss it over? The leadership means military conquest. That's what Americans mean, actually, the policymakers. So how will the world react to it? Especially countries like India will react to it. China, I cannot say, because China is totally dependent on the US.
And US is dependent on China. It works both ways.
That's right.
Interestingly, you talked about the Washington circuit. In India, we call it Lutyens Club, Khan Market Gang, because there is a market in the New Delhi, Lutyens Delhi, where all these people, journalists and intellectuals believe they run India. They come together, they try to create a narrative. They were successful so far. It's a a very tight network. And Luton is what Mr. Luton made for British, which is the heart of Delhi, the governing circles. And they were deciding the narrative. But once Modi ji came in, they are powerless now. So I think a disruptive politician like Trump, who is hated by most of the Americans, I'm told, whether or not I do not know, because I doubt it. But he may have a lot of faults, but he was the one who tried to break the Washington centric politics and the deep state, and he suffered for it. And now so this is what we look at, that we are a small circle tries to, in a very claustrophobic manner, tries to define the world. And that is where the problem lies, just the way our leftist and intellectuals try to define what India is. With the rise of Modi, with the decentralization of power, people coming from remote areas in governance, and with the totally India-centric views, have changed the entire polity. So when will the powerful state governments of USA really come out and be more clear what they want, rather than depending on Washington's worldview, is what will change it. And as far as American new lobby of anti-Hindu, anti-India is of course there, and but the relations are changing. I'm told Pentagon has given privilege pass to Indian Defense Secretary. But in the sense of creating a phobia, Hindu hate, I think that starts from the academic. The think tanks and academics in US are very powerful compared to other countries probably, and they actually set the narrative. And this narrative has to be fought locally by the Indians, by the Hindus. It cannot be fought by outsiders. Recently, Biden has very amusingly appointed Maulana as the Human Rights Commission member or chairman. I forget right now. Did he ever ask whether Islam believes in equal rights for all religions? Whether it believes that people who are not Muslims are actually second-class citizens, kafirs or non-believers who need to be corrected in different ways? I will not get into that because there are so many. I don't want to get into that side. But if this is the kind of politics where you create Hindu phobia or Hindu hate with the help of academicians, and others simply blindly follow without studying, and then you have Maulana becoming head of the human rights, just the way UNHRC had human rights people from Saudi Arabia, China, etc., North Korea. So similarly, a person who doesn't believe in equal rights to human beings on the basis of religion is becoming head of the Human Rights Commission. So this strange paradox and this strange misunderstanding of the world, I would not say it is deliberate, is simply the way Muslims have been able to present Islam in USA, and failure of Indians to represent Indians and Hindus in a way that actually they exist. And their own philosophy, their own ideology, they are the most prosperous people, they are the most influenced people, they have always given positivity, always contribute to the local nations' wealth and prosperity wherever they are. Whether they went there as contract labor, near slaves in sugar belt, or whether they went there as professionals or as labor, wherever they have gone, they have contributed positively to that particular nation, to the society, and got itself assimilated with the society. If this quality of Hindus is we are not able to project in US polity and academics, I think it's a mistake of Indians as compared to the wonderful lobbying done by the Islamic lobbies.
See, the America respects strength, which is very clear. America respects Indian military more than India as a culture, as a community, as a Hindu nation. You mentioned two important points here, and I want to see your views there. Number one is media. So in America, there is no freedom of expression now. Gradually, it's decreasing day by day. I mean, for no reason, people are kicked out for Facebook. Americans, there is no protection in American law for American citizens also. And what Facebook does in USA does much worse in India. And Twitter also does the same thing. But nonetheless, and the media, if you look at the media, no real issues are being spoken in the media, any of the media. Like the gas prices, people are not talking about it. People are not talking about inflation. People are not talking about other things like basic necessities like housing. such a big land and people have no houses to buy. Affordable housing, which can be very easily built in the US, not being done. So looks like America is built for the elites. Now, when this consumerism is exported from India, from US to other countries, every country is copying these things, especially countries like Mexico and other third world nations, not India, but India has their own industry also. So, so do you think the freedom of expression will become questionable everywhere in the world, including India? Because nowadays the freedom of expression is not through the newspapers, it's through the American social media companies. What is your view on that?
There is a movie called Truman Show, superb hit. It created an artificial world for Truman, and who believed he was free, he was deciding what's happening, and things are already pre-planned, decided by the creators of the particular community and film. So we are in a situation where big tech decides what you think, big tech decides how the world thinks, and it decides how you should react. If it doesn't react that way, so even liberalism is a fig leaf for controlling thoughts. It is a this liberalism has become most illiberal. Cancel culture started from US. It is spreading like wildfire, and people who control the power decide what will be thought and what will be done. It reminds me of Animal Farm, if you remember the perceptively written decades back. So this is a dangerous situation. And when we are brainwashed into believing that military industrial complex is doing any good to America, when pharma industry is reaping billions of dollars without worrying about the side effects, presenting wrong, fake reports, if all this is going on in USA, that is what will hurt USA itself and the US citizens. As you rightly pointed out, serious issues are not discussed. The poverty is spreading. 10.5% of US citizens are considered impoverished in a country which is supposed to be most developed, most wealthy. If 10.5%, which means 30 million people, are living below poverty line by American standards, and I have seen the hutments, I have seen the horrible conditions even in Los Angeles, where people live on the footpaths in various places, going to community kitchen to get some food with food voucher, etc. It's a situation that has to be seen, and America can definitely do better, because if America can influence in a positive way by putting Jews and Muslims together under when Trump was there, and the earlier days when it was supporting people truly through UN for hunger, elimination, etc. But in USA, this is rising. If that is rising, and we close our eyes, or the USA citizens close their eyes, that is where that Black Lives Matter get strength. That is where the radical left gets strength, by finding such problematic areas where the governments and politicians are not looking at.
So another like the related to this point is we already spoke a little bit on that. US exported leftism to every single country of the world in the name of protecting human rights, and undue pressure on India and other countries, including countries like China, Russia, and everywhere else, where human rights was a Damocles sword hanging over people's head. Now, and in the name of that, leftism was promoted. Communist parties were given money, and the destroying other democracies, particularly democracies. You'll see if you see a track record of the US, particularly they worked against democracies. And even though they were promoting democracy, so what it meant was any democracy leader, democratically elected leader that helps their business is a friendly nation. Otherwise,
Yes,
they'll break them up. Like what happened to Venezuela, Cuba. These are all democratic countries. Their people elected whatever leaders they elected, they elected. It was not acceptable to the US. So in the recent Pan American summit, many countries, including Mexico, did not participate. Biden had organized in, I think it was in Los Angeles or somewhere. They did not participate as a protest of the what do you call it, the American foreign policy, against protest against the American foreign policy. So you know, how do India views that, and what India can do to safeguard their democracy, which is obviously the oldest one. Loktantra is mentioned in Mahabharata also. So what is your view on
see,
that?
in my initial comment, I had talked about US interference in Latin America 41 times in 100 years, changing the governments there. So it is already given as taken. As far as human rights are concerned, it is very strange that we link it to liberals and to communists, because communists are the worst enemies left is the worst enemy of human rights. Look at the record of Russia, look at the record of China, North Korea, Laos, and many other countries. Between themselves, they have killed 100 million people because they didn't believe in their communism. So, this total intolerance, what is happening to Muslims in China is very well known. And if this is the kind of world that we are trying to export in the name of a liberal left, I think we have not understood the real, real work of communists and leftists in the world suppressing human rights, because they have their own version. Those who don't believe in that version are not worthy of living in a free society or living in any society. And for America to fall under it, I don't think American leaders are at all doubtful who has human is good at human rights, who is not. They know very well, and this is just political posturing, as you rightly pointed out. Most of the governments destroyed by the Americans were actually democratic governments. They have generally not touched dictators or actually installed dictators where they need natural resources to be exploited for their own consumption. That is very clear. As far as India is concerned, India is no more listening to all these lectures. You know, the foreign minister, Mr. Jaishankar, very clearly told in as good as what we call in do tuk in Hindi, we say, in a very blunt manner, that if they want to buy energy from Russia, they will buy. If they want to work with any country, they will do, and they have done it. They have not given two hoots to what USA was trying to force upon them. For USA to talk about India buying a very small fraction of oil when they are importing fertilizer from USA, or European countries who are buying much more petroleum from Russia than India ever has done or is doing even now. So India will look after interest. Slowly, every country will believe that they have to look after their own interest. And this power of sanction, which they have been using for years together, beginning from World War II against Japan, that power of sanction will slowly shrink because people are defied. As we see in Ukraine-Russian war, most of the countries are defying it, including USA itself, and of the US, of the Europe. So if Europe breaks links with USA, then what strength is got? They have huge wealth because they have got monies of various countries in their banks. Even China will think 100 times before disturbing USA, because its own savings and its own assets are lying with America. So this being so, America has an upper hand, but it should stop lecturing other countries. It should really work for democratic societies. It should really work for elimination of poverty, and should also try to look at the dark underside of USA, which is actually creating destabilization. And that's a must, because as far as the concerned, as many philosophers said, that until we reach the last man, like Deen Dayal Upadhyay of BJP had said, like Gandhiji had said, Antyodaya, etc., unless we reach to the right person, give him or her the dignity, these things will not work. Why Black Stars are revolting? Because somewhere out there is still racism. Somewhere out there is sense of discrimination, of course, which is being nurtured by the left because they want to use that dissatisfaction to create an arc in USA. All these things are known and should be seen much more seriously. That is why the way out, as far as world is concerned, as I said, world the countries which can withstand this pressure, they are already withstanding the pressure, and America is reacting in a mature manner, not trying to force its idea down the throat of the other countries, probably because it has realized its weakness, probably because its moral strength is gone down after the Afghanistan episode and the Ukraine episode. And I think that's a good learning for USA. That should do good to USA.
My last question, like the Chinese spy ships reported in American media in coming on Sri Lanka, and also American IMF and World Bank based organizations not able to help Sri Lanka because they did not have money or any guarantees to pay. Despite that, India gave $4.5 billion to Sri Lanka. But the spy ship is there. Now, some American policymakers say or ask question why India is not acting militarily against those ships. Now they have raised it. It came under discussion also. So, and the second thing is, at the same time, Americans are still involved in Afghanistan and Pakistan, supporting funding organizations which work against India. Turkey is still a NATO ally, and Turkey has historically worked against Indians and in general, even Indian businessmen. You will be surprised to know that most Indians cannot get a direct visa to Turkey. They have to go through some other country. Till date, it is going on till date. So, how do you think India will react to all these things, which are supported by the American State Department and various other agencies of the U.S. government, including CIA?
See, first of all, India is slowly clearing the cobwebs of last so many years of an inferiority complex of going down to the West and not looking at self-interest much more confidently, also selling its soft power to the world and also its policy. Now, alignment was started by Mr. Nehru, but due to his tilt with towards communist countries, world didn't believe. But today, when Modi ji takes an independent stance, whether in case of Ukraine, in case of other countries, people understand that India is speaking from a position of strength. That is why it has responded to every kind of pressure in a very, very frank manner and refused to go down. As far as Sri Lanka is concerned, let us also realize that Sri Lanka has much bigger debt from China. So it cannot right now look into the eyes of Chinese, though it has every reason to. And India has never been a dominating power in the sense USA is. It has never used military against its own neighbors. When it was done in Lanka, it was done on the invitation of Sri Lankan government. It is a blunder, okay, but it was done at the invitation of American government. In case of Pakistan, it's a different issue. It was a war. So India, right from time immemorial, has never used military might to subdue other countries. That is the reason, even where it had good presence, like in Southeast Asia, it is still loved. Tell me one colonial power which is loved by the people where they were. So India will find way out, and Lanka will have to give up its dependence on China. It will have to realize that only India stands by it whenever it is in trouble. So it is also lesson to Lanka, and I think India will be able to make them learn this, that where their interests lie. But yes, there are still tough times, and we know why. World would know why India behaved in a certain manner in case of Sri Lanka or other countries. But it has always helped, given humane help to various countries, whether they have been friendly or not. Even in Afghanistan, they are supporting it with the food grain, etc., because the local people should not suffer what jihadis are doing. So this kind of approach has helped India create goodwill. It will find its way. It has supported whether Nepal or Bangladesh in every crisis, or Myanmar or any other country. As we see, even during COVID, it was India that helped other countries, not the rich countries. So it will carry on, and Lanka will see the light one of these days, because it has gone through the entire cycle of prosperity, now desperate poverty and destitution. So it is better they wake up, but India cannot force, it to wake up, nor use force, because that is not India's policy.
If you look at the history since World War II, if you look at the history since World War II, every country where USA has been the closest partner, that country has collapsed today. Every country. You look at all the countries anywhere USA has been involved, and the last example is Pakistan, and before that, Ukraine, where USA has been the closest ally. So Eisenhower was right. Being a friend of America is fatal, actually. Enemy is bad, but friend is fatal. So your last reserving comments on this one.
I think being friends with a giant country like America is not bad idea, but whether it's a beer hug, whether it's a friendly hug, is something that people should ponder over, and also USA should realize that it should not have a reverse effect on the countries that it tries to influence. His policies are slowly even in tatters in US itself. The way inequality is increasing, the way poverty is increasing. So rather than trying to tell others how to run their economy via IMF or World Bank, etc. See, IMF, World Bank did help rich countries. They never questioned their policies. They always went with them. They never penalized them. But they forced their way into poor countries, and they never come out of it, because each country has its own issues. So trying to drive the world economy using international agencies or directly is not going to benefit US finally. Because if the world also suffers, then how will America enjoy the, using various cheap materials coming from different countries? Bangladesh is on the verge right now. It may be due to many reasons, but ultimately, world and US are intertwined. Like we say in India, that actually world is all intertwined and integral, and what you call today in the Western world butterfly effect. So if the world survives, world is happy place, then US will be happier place. To think that they can dictate terms and let others suffer doesn't work in the long run. Even in short run, we realize in last decade what is happening to USA. So they need to realize that world is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is true wording of India, which says that world is a family. World is not a market to be exploited. Look at the glee of pharma companies when COVID broke, and look at the glee of arm industry in USA when Ukraine war broke. So to bake your bread in the fires created by these kind of ideas is something that US has to come out of.
Thank you so much, Ratanji, for coming on the show. And you heard the views of Dr. Ratan Sharda, and some of you were live here. And thank you so much
Thank
for coming on the show. And our whole purpose was on this show was to make what is the Indian perspective on what is the US strength today or weaknesses today. So, namaskar.
thank you. Thank you.